Hi there, it's Wednesday, 26th of August 2020. We're continuing to look at how to read the Bible. And so far we've seen that the Bible is a library of 66 different kinds of writings, poetry and songs, and stories, biography, law, all kinds of different writings, all grouped together into the different sections as you would see in a library. And of course there's different ways of reading through a library of different books or writings. There are three popular ways, and those are the overview. First of all, just to read many different writings all at once. If you're interested in the stories, and read through the historical books, or if you're interested in the poems, then read through all the poems. And then secondly, to study, to actually take one of those poems and just to look through it in more detail. And then thirdly, to meditate, to take one of the phrases or one of the lines in one of the poems and just think about that and chew that over. And if we're going to study, then we're going to have to do three things. We're going to have to use some observation to ask, what is this actually saying? Secondly, interpretation, what does it mean? And thirdly, application, what does it mean to me? And so we're going to look at not a verse today as we did yesterday. We looked at John 3:16, but we're going to look at a passage today. We're going to look at part of a chapter within John's biography about Jesus. So it's John, and it's in chapter 8 in the first 11 verses. And it's all about a woman who was caught in the act of adultery by some of the religious leaders. And they brought the woman to Jesus and they said, look, the law says, if you look back in the law, Jesus, our law says that somebody caught in adultery deserves to be stoned to death. And so what do you say? And they were trying to trick Jesus because they'd heard that Jesus was showing compassion and forgiving people their sins. And they wanted to see, would Jesus forgive this woman and then not uphold the law, in which case they could criticize him for that? Or would Jesus not forgive the woman and uphold the law and help stone the woman to death, in which case they could say, well, Jesus is just like all of us religious people. He's no different to us. So they were really trying to trick Jesus. They didn't really care very much about the woman. And Jesus kind of ignored their question, or he answered it in a different way. And he started to write on the ground. We don't know what he wrote on the ground, but whatever it was, it spoke into the hearts of the people who were there, the crowd that had gathered. And Jesus says, if any one of you is without sin, then you pick up the stone and start the stoning. And they realised that they were all just as guilty as the woman, perhaps not of adultery, but perhaps of other sins or misdemeanours. And so they all started to disperse. And it ended up there was only Jesus and the woman left. And Jesus says, where are all your accusers gone? And the woman says, there's nobody left. And Jesus says, well, I'm not accusing you either, but leave your life of sin. So he didn't condone her sinful action. He didn't say it was okay to continue to sleep around. He said, no, leave that life of sin. It's not right to do that. You're only going to hurt yourself and hurt others. Leave that life of sin, but you are forgiven. And so the woman left. What an amazing story that is. So when we observe, when we ask, what does the Bible say? That's what the Bible said in that story. It portrayed the story of a woman, apparently a true story of a woman caught in adultery. What does that mean then? So after we observe, after we see who is actually in the story and what's going on, what does it actually mean? What's the interpretation of that? Well, what it means is that there were some religious people who had a very fixed idea about what was right and wrong, and there was no room for manoeuvre within that. There was no grace. If you broke the law, then you should suffer the punishment for that law breaking. And of course, they had every right in one sense to do that, to uphold the law. Who could say that it's not good to uphold the law? But Jesus was coming not just to uphold the law, but he was coming to do more than upholding the law. He was coming to show mercy and grace to those lawbreakers. And rather than just punishing people, he was there to take the punishment upon himself and to allow the people who believe in Jesus to have their sins forgiven and to have their sinful behaviour changed. Because the law would never actually end up changing your behaviour. It would only catch you out in your bad behaviour. It wouldn't make you behave well. But Jesus says, if you will believe in me and trust in me, and I will come into your heart and your life by my Spirit. I will help you to live a different life. And that's what he was saying to the woman. And that's what this story is meaning. So that's the interpretation. And finally, of course, the question is not just what does it say or what does it mean, but what does this mean to me? What it means to me is that I should live a life where I'm not just upholding the law, but showing love and grace and forgiveness to those who sin. That I should be showing Jesus in the way that I live, showing that love, showing that tenderness, showing that compassion, helping people to leave their life of sin by the power of God's Spirit, and sharing this story so that others might be touched by it. What a wonderful story. That's one of the ways of reading the Bible, to study, to allow the Word to speak into your heart and to change your heart so that you will live a different way. Speak to you again tomorrow.